Greetings, my name is Dan and it's the 29th of September 2024. So around this time of year I quite often like to make a video on grapes. Now over the years I've been relatively successful with the growing of grapes as an amateur grower. Over 10 years now, maybe even closer to, about 10-12 years I've been growing grapes, something like that. So in my garden I have, I think, 5 varieties of grape now, and we're going to have a look at them and I'm going to show you the varieties I've got. Now I've been picking grapes from this garden for over a month now and I've got plenty more to come, so that's very good indeed. So let's start with the first variety and I'll show you that. So before we get into the information in this video, please feel free to subscribe if you'd like to be notified when I put up any further videos. Please feel free to like it and share it with anyone who you think may find it interesting or useful. So the first variety in question we're going to be talking about is a lovely dark grape variety called Muscat Blanc. So I've grown this in this garden and in another garden as well. In fact, this is a cutting from that vine. If you check out my playlist, which I made some years ago now on YouTube here, you'll see the original vine in which I took this cutting from. So it's very fascinating to me that now this is such a productive vine. Now, if you checked out my last few videos I'd put up, you will have seen this vine here in all of its glory, really. I've eaten many bunches from here now, I've given many away as well. So this variety contains seeds. Now, we'll pick some and I'll show you what they look like, but if you really want to see this in all its productive glory, check out my last couple of videos because you'll see this grapevine in there and it really was laden with fruit, much of which is going over now, but there's still plenty of lovely fruit to harvest. So let's pick one, or a bunch, and you can have a look. A bunch of these. Now, you'll notice that a lot of these are well past their best, but there's still plenty of lovely edible grapes on these, or on this. So I'm going to pick the really nice ones off of this, put them in the bowl there, and we can have a taste test and talk a little bit about this variety. So this is a seeded variety, and a way that I would describe the taste of it would be that it kind of tastes like an old-fashioned grape, if that makes sense. So now these have been ripening for some time, so the sugar content will be much higher in these than they were a few weeks ago. So they're incredibly sweet and delicious. They've got like a perfumey taste as well. And I'd really recommend this variety if you want a relatively early ripening grape variety. Because I've been eating off this vine now probably for, seems like a month or so, certainly a good 3 weeks. So that was around early September these started to be ready. And that's true even this year when the summer hasn't really been that warm, or indeed it didn't come till relatively late. So Muscat Blanc, for a nice early variety of grape, stick this one on your list. It's great tasting, it looks nice. I've actually got this here up against a southeast facing wall, or fence rather, as you can see. So it does very well indeed. If you can grow your grapes up against ideally a south facing wall or fence, southwest I've got grapes growing up against. In case of this one, southeast, does quite fine here, no problem at all. But yeah, beautiful vine and a highly recommended variety here. So I've got a lovely variety here called Suffolk Red. Now, for those of you who prefer the more tidy garden, doesn't really suit my personality to have a garden of that, nor do I really have a lifestyle that sort of lends itself that well to that. But what I've got here is a beautiful variety, Suffolk Red. Now this is an absolutely gorgeous variety of grape which I've been incredibly impressed with. So I'm going to pick these now, and this vine is said to be relatively hardy, so if you're living in an area with colder conditions, this could be one you want to consider. But let's get the scissors, pick a bunch of these grapes, and you can see them in all their beautiful glory. So at this point it would be very interesting if anyone out there excuse me, who is growing grapes in their garden or their allotment or wherever, maybe you've got your own vineyard, professional or amateur, whatever, let me and other viewers know in the comments section what varieties you're growing, maybe what country you're in, what region you're in, USDA zone, etc, etc, and be very interesting to see what you're growing, because myself and other people will be very interested, I'm sure. So anyway, let's pick a bunch of these and do a little taste test. So this variety here, there we go, so they're a little sort of reddy, pinky, purpley colour. So really beautiful there, you can see those. So taste wise, these are incredibly sweet. To be honest, in a funny sort of way, they're not unlike, you know them Haribo sweets you can eat? They're not unlike that. And they're very nice looking variety as well. So I've actually been picking these now, probably for about 2 weeks. Now, these do get a bit darker than, so you see these ones here, look, they're still on the pale side, and these are a bit on the darker side. So ideally what I would have done, if I had this vine growing maybe in a different location, is I'd train it once again up against the southwest facing wall or fence. I haven't done that here, and it very much is on the rustic side, but that's fine. I've had to do that in order to make sure I can get the varieties in I want to grow. So Suffolk Red, if you want a beautiful, sweet variety of grape to grow, seedless, definitely put this one on your list. I've had this vine a few years, and it's the first time it's gave me a nice crop. Another little bunch here as well. So these are going to be going in the bowl along with a Muscat Blanc. Suffolk Red, still ripening. I reckon I've probably got about another week or two of these ripening. So been picking them for about 2 weeks, maybe a bit longer, and probably another 2 or so weeks to go as well. So from where you saw the Muscat Blanc earlier there, it continues this way. So the Muscat Blanc is actually planted here, grows that way, that you saw earlier. So I've actually got plenty more Muscat Blanc growing here. Now there's one thing that I like to do with my grapes. Quite often it happens naturally because the vine gets denser in places, gets covered in leaf in places. I like to sometimes remove leaves and expose certain parts of the vine and thus the bunches of grapes to the sun, and leave some under cover by the leaves. That way you can actually stagger your ripening after a while, so you're picking your grapes over a period of time, so you're not getting your grapes all in one go. For example, that bunch there is starting to shrivel now because it's been in sun a lot more than some of these ones that I'm picking from here. So even with the same variety, the same vine, you could stagger your picking season, which once again is a very good thing to do, because you don't want to get too many all in one go really, when you can stagger them and have a sort of successive crop over a period of time. Can be a nice thing to do. So this vine here is called Lakemont Seedless. It's a US variety. It's the vine the variety I've probably spoken most about over the years. Very lovely variety, Lakemont Seedless, unsurprisingly a seedless variety, and almost honey sweet when ripe. Once again, I do the sort of successive style of cropping this. So for example, you see here I've left a few under cover here. Down the other end I've left them exposed more to the sun, so I'm picking most of those. Although up here you do get some, like this for example, these have been exposed to the sun a bit more. So you can see there, they tend to take on a more sort of yellowy colour once or if they're exposed to a lot of sun, whereas if they're not, they tend to stay more of a greeny colour. So this is a delicious variety, and it performs year after year. This vine here is actually a vine that I bought from a nursery. I think it was a Victoriana nursery, and that's all Blackmore, one or the other. This is a grafted variety, whereas over there, that vine there, is actually one I took from a cutting from a pre-existing vine. You can propagate grapes from cuttings very easily. I've made videos on the subject. If you get time, check out a load of videos I'm going to link in the description box below, and you can see the lovely video, well hopefully lovely videos there, which should give you a bit more information on the subject. So this is against a southwest facing fence. The reason why it's good to hold or to grow grapes up against south facing walls and fences is because it holds the heat, and then it radiates the heat back onto the vine, and the bunches can help it grow quicker and can help to ripen the fruit. Particularly important if you're in a cooler location. Here in the southeast of England, we do get some of the warmer weather by UK standards. Of course, that's no guarantee for anything, but maybe if you're living in the UK further north or in another country entirely where the weather is not so favourable, that can be quite a good thing to do. But yeah, you know, you go to plenty of vineyards though, and the grapes aren't grown up against south facing wall or fences. You know, they're grown in fields. So there we go, do your own research. But yeah, Lakemont Seedless, beautiful variety. So been picking these now probably for a bit over a week, and there's loads more to come. I estimate I've got about another 3 weeks, maybe even a month more of ripening here. That's if the squirrels don't get them. But as I stated before, as I start to run out of varieties, or bunches rather, I've left exposed to the sun, I'll start to, or maybe start removing some of the foliage and letting the other bunches ripen as well. So over here, I've actually got quite a lot of grapes I've allowed to grow up into a tree. So we're going to get up there and have a look. And this is just a little quirk, if you will, you can add to your garden. So this is not the brightest nor the most sensible thing to do, what I'm going to do here, because I'm actually wearing Crocs. Whoops. So there we are. Don't climb in Crocs. Crikeys. Don't climb in Crocs, really. So we're just going to get up here. Good gracious. Oh. Yeah, that's not good. Don't do things like this. But anyway, not the most comfortable fence to sit on either. But up here, I've got quite a few varieties, or bunches, keep saying varieties, bunches of grapes here growing up this tree. So there we go. So there we go. A nice bunch there. Now these are really sweet because these have been getting plenty of sun up here. So that's a worthwhile thing to consider. Now, if you're going to let a vine grow up into a tree like this, just be aware it can completely engulf it. And I will have to get up here and prune this. I like to prune my grapes, the hard pruning, in early winter, so late November time. That's when I'll do this, but I'll get up there here and sort this out. Now, grapevines can very easily get out of control, so there's a little warning for you. If you're going to grow a grapevine, don't grow one expecting it to be low maintenance, because especially when they get a few years on them, they can grow rampantly and very, very quickly. I've seen enormous ones working as a gardener where people have just left them for years, either deliberately or non-deliberately. They've moved into a house, whatever, and there's one already there, and they can get big very quickly. So a little warning there, if you get a grapevine or you've already got one, keep an eye on it because they can get out of hand very easily. So grapes can do well in a variety of soils. Now actually the phrase thriving from neglect can be applicable to the growing of grapes. In all the years I've been growing grapes, over 10 years now, never ever have I bothered fertilising them, feeding them. I've always just left them. Of course, if you're growing them in a container or a pot, that's a different story. But if you're growing them in open ground, I certainly don't feed these. So, regarding soil conditions of the growing of grapes, I've seen them growing in a variety of soils. The soil here is quite stony, quite sandy, and they absolutely love this. I worked at the place a few years ago. In fact, I've actually got the video up on YouTube, how to restore a neglected and uncared for untidy grapevine or something like that. That was actually growing in an area of very heavy clay soil. Now, grapes, they don't like to be growing in sort of too much heavy, wet clay soil, if you know what I mean. So they can grow in clay soil, but you don't want them sitting in puddles of water whilst they're in there. They want the water to come away from the roots. So if you're living in an area where it does that, you could maybe consider growing a grapevine, of course, in a pot, or maybe in a raised bed where you control the growing medium. Get plenty of organic matter in there, maybe put a bit of grit in there, just to help that water get away from the roots. They don't like sitting in there in too much water. Now here, grapes absolutely thrive. They love it here, do very well indeed. In fact, there's several vineyards in the sort of local district or area, whatever you want to call it. So anyway, little bunch here. Now we'll just pick this one here. So this area here, as you can see, probably can't see it that well because it's not getting dark, but it's autumn time almost, or kind of already there in a way, and the sun is positioned how it is. But here you can see, look, now these are beautiful. In fact, this might be the less, sorry, what am I saying? This might be the sweetest variety of, this might be the sweetest bunch of grapes I've picked all day. That's very nice. Or at least the sweetest of the Lakemont Seedless. So, someone is going to ask me, Dan, what is the sweetest variety of grape you're growing? Well, at the moment, it's incredibly close between this variety, Lakemont Seedless, and the Suffolk Red. I might be inclined to say that the Suffolk Red might be a little bit sweeter, but that's at the moment. The way to really work that out, you'd have to grow them under equal conditions, of course, plenty of sun, remove some of the leaves, let the sun hit the bunches of grapes to let the sugar content increase, and then test them. You can even do like a little test they do, isn't it, with regards to the Brix content, the Brix test of the sugar content of the grapes. You could consider something like that, but I wouldn't really want to get into it. I don't like turning gardening into a competition. I mean, of course there are gardening competitions, you know, growing giant vegetables and stuff, and absolutely no problem with that. I might even enter one day, who knows. But regarding these, no competition between particular varieties for me. So if I was going to say I wanted to grow the sweetest grape that I've found so far, I'd probably grow Lakemont Seedless and Suffolk Red, because there's not much between them, and they are a different sort of flavour. So two lovely varieties there. So this variety of grape here I'm incredibly interested in. So this is a variety called Ria, which is a Slovakian variety. Now quite often people say English grown grapes are small. Well, these are not small actually. So of course Ria, a variety from Slovakia, and it's growing well here in the UK climate. Didn't do so well here last year. They got some sort of fungal disease, but this year they seem unaffected, which is great. So the first time I came across this variety here was, I did a job for someone and I noticed this variety was growing in his garden. Now he didn't know what variety it was, and neither did I, and a viewer actually told me it's this variety. So there we are. Now they're not quite ready yet. Some of them are on the way, but they need a little bit longer, maybe another 4 or 5 days or so. So they're on the softer side. They're a seedless variety. When they're ready, they'll go a bit more sort of a pinky purpley colour. Really nice indeed. Once again, you can remove leaves, etc. You can leave some leaf in front of to allow sun to hit some and not others, to once again sustain your ripening variety. But this variety Ria, I would definitely put on the list, especially if you want a nice large grape to grow in the UK or a similar climate. So I'll actually give you a bit of a close-up of these and show you what they're like. So here we are. Look at that. They're really beautiful, and I've got plenty of them here. crikeys, look, they're growing down here and amongst my blueberries plants. Look, oh, yeah, look down there, look at them. They're gorgeous, they are, look. So as I indulge in some more grape delicacies from my bowl of pickings here, now I'm growing another variety, and that is called Venus, but I no longer have any I can actually show you of that variety, but I did feature it in a grape video I put up a few weeks ago. Well, it wasn't a grape video, but it was in a video that I put up, so you can check that out. And if you want to learn more about Venus and see it, you can check that out as well. Venus, very nice variety. I recommend you grow that variety as well, but the vine for that is behind here. So all along here, Lakemont Seedless here. No, it's not, sorry. It is Muscat Blanc here. Then we go into Venus, and then we go into Suffolk Red. So 3 varieties of grape growing here. I may decide to give them all the love they deserve and prune them accordingly and make it a bit more organised for next year. On the other hand, I might not. I might leave it as it is because it does have a sort of natural charm to it. So let's have a look at something else. Onions! Ha ha! So this vine here, Lakemont Seedless, I actually have allowed it to grow all the way along here. Now I did show my viewers this last year, but I'm actually growing these in an area where they don't get much, if any, some of them, direct sunlight. And I'll show you this and we'll do a taste test, and actually I'm quite impressed with how they've done this year and last year, despite many of them not getting any full sunlight. So you can see the vineyard in its glory here. So as we go along, come to this lot here, so really is loads and loads of grapes upon grapes there, loads and loads once again here, and we go all the way along, and I think you get the general idea of the sheer enormity of the crop here. But the thing that makes it fascinating is, as I stated, I allowed the vine to grow all the way along here. Now these ones here still get a bit of sun. Now these here, you can see there, look, these really don't get a lot at all. In fact, this one here, this lot here proves the point a little bit. And these bunches of grapes here, look. Now, these aren't getting any full sun really. And actually, they're perfectly edible and quite sweet, to be honest. And they've got longer as well. These will probably hang on here another 2 or 3 weeks if I let them, maybe even a little bit longer. And their sugar content should increase and they should be sweeter. So this is a little thing. So there is all this always, you do hear, you know, grapes on south facing walls and things like that, which I do recommend, but sometimes it can pay to go outside the general rules of gardening, or and just try something a bit different. And I did this partially or partly for myself to see how they would do, but I also did it for some viewers, or some of the viewers out there, because I can imagine not everybody has got perfect circumstances in order to grow grapes and they want to have a go. So this variety here, Lakemont Seedless, this is doing pretty well here, despite the fact this part of the vine is not getting full sun. And these are still perfectly edible and very sweet indeed. Well, not very sweet indeed just yet, but certainly sweet enough to eat, and they should get sweeter. So here we are with my lovely harvest. So in order of picking, and in fact to a degree in order of readiness, Muscat Blanc, highly recommended you grow that variety. Then we moved on to the Suffolk Red, and whilst discussing that, I told you, or just after that, I told you about variety Venus, which is a really nice one. Then we moved on to the Lakemont Seedless, and then we moved on to Rhea. So these are all great varieties of grapes that you could grow in the UK, or at least this part of the UK anyway. This is Southeast, USDA Zone 8B. So sometimes I do get asked the question or the comment, Dan, the UK is not really that cold, or is the UK really that cold in comparison to other parts of the world, etc., etc.? Well, that is open to opinion, and yeah, of course. So the UK, or at least the majority of it, compare that to a place such as Canada, where parts of that can get incredibly cold indeed for much longer and much colder than it gets here. Yes, so the varieties I've got here, they do well in this climate. Maybe if you're growing these or something similar in another part of the UK or another part of the world, whatever, which is either similar or maybe a little bit different, maybe comment in the comment section below how it does in your area, or how you manage to grow grapes where you are, what varieties you're growing. Do you grow them under cover, for example, maybe in a greenhouse or a polytunnel? So with regards to what varieties should you grow if you live in a harsher climate than what I've got here. Now, I looked up a variety called Valiant, which is apparently hardy down to -40 degrees C, which funnily enough is actually -40 degrees Fahrenheit as well. So there we are. So that's certainly very cold. I've not experienced a temperature as low as that. I think the lowest it's been around here was about -10, -12. I do remember it being mentioned once upon a time in this part of the UK. One winter I remember it stated it went down to about -13 degrees C. There we are. It said that on the news, I think, or some part of the news. So whether it was true or not, but it was very cold, and in places there was sort of snow drifts up to here. So it was possible it could have been that sort of cold, or maybe that cold. I remember, funnily enough, that was when I was working years ago as one of my care assistant jobs, and we had to take some patients back in the minibus, and we got stuck in many places, etc., etc. I think that was probably about, crikeys, I'm guessing here, about 2010, something like that, but I digress. Now, might have even been before that. 2010, yes, I think it was. Yes, so I digress there. Now, with regards to the Lakemont seedless vine, that took the beast from the east. Remember that we had round here, where it did get relatively cold indeed, and we did have snow drifts in places, and that vine came up smiling. Did no problem at all. Did very well indeed. So there we are. But anyway, point is, look for varieties that grow where you are. Maybe look at local garden centres, talk to local gardeners, visit local vineyards, look on the internet, etc. Grow something that's suitable for where you are. You could consider, you know, the nice warm microclimate like I've told you about, self-facing wall or fence, etc. Maybe even covering it in winter if you've got very, very harsh climate. Do your research. Don't give up, and see if there's something that you can grow in your area, you know, down to -40 degrees C, if it's true anyway. That variety Valiant, certainly one worth looking into, and I'm sure a very simple Google search or something like that will tell you other varieties that can be grown where you are. And there might just be places that are too cold where you can't, I don't know, but do your own research, have a look, and hopefully you will find a lot. So another interesting thing, spoke about soil in which to grow grapes in. I've also read that growing grapes in chalky soil, or certain varieties, whatever, can lead to a lovely tasting wine. Is that true? Any of you know about this? I'm not much of a connoisseur, so I don't actually know, but you can let me know. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that video. Thank you very much. Goodbye. You are the weakest link. Goodbye.